Imagine standing in a room where every conversation shapes a future, where every word has weight, and where every voice competes to be heard, but only a few truly lead. Not because they shout the loudest, not because they know the most, but because when they speak, something happens. The room shifts. People lean in. The atmosphere sharpens. Their words carry clarity, confidence, and calm authority, the unmistakable sound of leadership. Now imagine you standing in that room, and everyone turning toward your voice, not out of obligation, but out of respect, out of trust, out of the quiet, magnetic pull that only a leader's communication carries. This audiobook is the beginning of that transformation. Leadership isn't about titles, age, or experience. Leadership is a voice, a presence, a way of speaking that signals to the world, I know where we are going, follow me. And here's the liberating truth. Leader-level communication is not something you're born with. It's something you build, brick by intentional brick, word by deliberate word, habit by powerful habit. Across this journey, you will learn how to speak with conviction, influence, and character, how to turn uncertainty into clarity, how to communicate in a way that moves people, not through force, but through inspiration, how to lead conversations, guide emotions, and shape decisions simply by the way you speak. By the time this audiobook ends, you won't just sound like a leader, you will feel like one, grounded, respectful, unshakable, clear. So take a deep breath, settle in, and prepare to unlock one of the greatest tools a human being can possess, the power to speak like a leader and be heard like one. Chapter 1. The Voice That Leads. Leadership begins long before the meeting room, the office door, or the team discussion. It begins with something far more intimate, your presence. Before a leader speaks, people sense something in them, a steadiness, a groundedness, a clarity. This is not about charisma or loudness. It is about the quiet control of one's internal world. Because the truth is simple, you can't lead others if you cannot first lead yourself. Let's begin here, with the foundation of every leader's communication, inner authority. Picture two people speaking. One is anxious, hurried, their words tumble out quickly, carrying the weight of their own doubt. The other speaks slowly, thoughtfully, with a calm rhythm. Their sentences have space. Their tone has intention. Their presence says, I am not here to impress. I am here to guide. Which one sounds like a leader? Your voice is an instrument, and like any instrument, it reflects its player. If your mind is scattered, your voice will be scattered. If your emotions are unsettled, your tone will be unsettled. But when your inner world is steady, your communication becomes crystal clear. Here's the first principle of talking like a leader. Slow down your internal pace. Leaders do not rush their words. They don't chase approval through speed. They don't fill silence with noise. They harness silence. They use it as space to think, to connect, to convey confidence without saying a single extra syllable. Because silence in the hands of a leader becomes part of the message. When you speak from a calm internal state, every word strengthens its impact. People listen more active. Your presence becomes magnetic. Your message lands more deeply. But how do you build this calm? How do you anchor your voice in that stable, grounded presence? You start by mastering 3 internal habits. Habit 1. Breathe before you speak. A single intentional breath resets your tone, your pace, and your confidence. It turns reaction into response. It gives your words weight instead of haste. Habit 2. Speak with purpose, not permission. A leader does not speak to be liked or validated. A leader speaks to contribute, to guide, to clarify. When your purpose is clear, your voice becomes clear. Habit 3. Own the moment you're in. Leaders don't shrink themselves in conversations. They don't apologize for existing in the space. They take their rightful place, not by force but by self-respect. When you own your presence, people feel it. Talking like a leader starts on the inside, but the world hears it on the outside, in the tone, the intention, the steadiness of your word. From today forward, speak from a place of composure, because you cannot lead with a voice that is fighting itself. When you express calm, people feel safe. When you express clarity, people follow. When you express conviction, people believe. And this right here is the first step in talking like a leader, not changing your vocabulary, not copying someone else's style, but strengthening the foundation of your voice, a calm mind, a steady heart, and an inner authority that cannot be shaken. This is where your journey begins, and in the next chapter, we'll explore how leaders use language, not to sound powerful, but to create power in the minds and hearts of the people they lead. Chapter 2. The Language of Influence. There is a moment in every person's life when they realize something powerful. Words are not just sounds, they are currents. They move people, they stir emotions, they shape decisions, relationships, and destinies. And when a true leader speaks, those currents feel different. Their words don't rush or collide. They land with intention, steady, clear, measured, like stones placed carefully across a river, guiding others safely to the other side. As you listen now, imagine this. You're standing at the edge of a vast valley at sunrise. The world is silent, waiting. The first light touches the ground, and suddenly everything begins to glow. The mountains, the trees, the sky. That moment, that slow, expanding brightness, that is what a leader's language feels like. It enters gently, but it wakes something inside you. A realization, a spark, a sense of direction you didn't have a moment before. This chapter is about that spark, the invisible force behind every leader's voice. Because leadership is not in the volume of your words. Leadership lives in the meaning you create with them. So let's begin here, with the undeniable truth that the way you speak shapes the way others feel in your presence, and how people feel around you determines whether they trust you, follow you, or turn away. A leader's language is not built on perfect grammar or sophisticated vocabulary. It's built on intention, the emotional blueprint behind the words. When your intention is clear, your communication becomes powerful. When your intention is confused, your communication becomes noise. Think about a time someone spoke to you and instantly made you feel seen, understood, or motivated. What did they actually say? Maybe the words weren't extraordinary. Maybe they weren't even long. But something in the tone, the sincerity, the presence behind those words opened something in you. It made you feel safe, or strong, or capable. In that moment, that person was leading you, not with force, but with influence. That is the heart of leadership communication, to create an emotional experience that lifts others higher. Now, let's go even deeper. Language is not just what you speak, it's what people absorb. Your tone communicates your confidence. Your pauses communicate your clarity. Your presence communicates your truth. Most people speak only to express themselves. Leaders speak to elevate the room. That's why a leader's first question is never, "What should I say?" It is always, "What do I want the people listening to feel?" Because feeling opens the door. Logic walks through it, and action follows behind. Let's explore the 4 emotional pillars that leaders intentionally build into their language. The 4 forces that make their communication unforgettable, influential, and deeply human. Pillar 1. Clarity. People follow what they understand. A leader removes fog, not adds to it. Their words show the path, even when the path is uncertain. When you speak with clarity, you don't just deliver information, you deliver relief. Pillar 2, respect. Leaders don't speak to belittle, overwhelm, or dominate. Their language honors the dignity of the person in front of them. Respect in speech is magnetic. People lean toward voices that value them. Pillar 3, calm authority. Not forceful authority, calm authority. The kind that says, I trust myself, I trust this direction. This energy makes people feel steady, even in moments of confusion or pressure. Pillar 4, purpose. Leaders don't speak to fill silence. They speak to move things forward. A person, a team, a situation, a moment in time. Their purpose breathes life into their word. As you develop your ability to talk like a leader, these 4 emotional pillars will become your guiding compass. They will turn ordinary conversations into defining moments. They will transform hesitation into confidence and uncertainty into influence. But understanding these pillars is only the beginning, because the real shift happens when you begin shaping your language with intention, when your words no longer come from habit, but from awareness. Imagine entering your next conversation not with anxiety or overthinking, but with a calm sense of influence. Imagine your tone naturally carrying clarity. Imagine your presence creating trust before you even finish a sentence. When this becomes your way of speaking, people don't just hear you, they feel you. They remember you. They are changed by you. That is the difference between talking and leading. One transfers sound, the other transfers vision. And the most powerful part of all this, anyone can learn it. It is not reserved for the gifted, the confident, or the extroverted. It is a skill, a muscle, that grows with awareness and practice. For now, pause and consider this. Every time you speak, you are shaping your leadership identity. With every conversation, you are building or weakening trust, strengthening or diminishing your influence, raising or lowering the emotional temperature around you. Once you understand that your language carries this much power, you will never speak casually again. You will speak consciously, with clarity, with respect, with calm authority, and with purpose. And that consciousness is where true leadership begins. As we move forward, you will learn how leaders not only shape their words, they shape the world around their words. Because communication is not just an act, it is an atmosphere you create, a space you hold, a direction you define. And in the next chapter, you'll discover how leaders create that atmosphere, how they use their voice, not just to speak, but to set the emotional tone of every room they enter. Chapter 3. The atmosphere your voice creates. There's a moment, a quiet, nearly invisible moment, that happens the second you enter a room. You may not notice it, but everyone else feels it. It's the shift in the air when your presence arrives, not because of your status, or your appearance, or the sound of your footsteps, but because of the emotional energy you carry with you. Your presence speaks before your mouth does, and long before you say your first word, people have already begun to feel who you are. This is the hidden power of leadership communication. Your voice does not begin with your voice. It begins with the atmosphere you create around it. Imagine walking into a room where someone is anxious. You feel their tension even before they greet you. Imagine entering a space where someone is angry. Their frustration hangs in the air like a storm waiting to break. Now imagine standing next to someone who is grounded, calm, steady, centered. Their presence feels like a warm fire in winter, or a lighthouse in the distance. It comforts you, even if they haven't said a single word. This is not magic. It is leadership psychology. The emotional state you carry becomes the emotional state you create. And the leaders who speak with influence understand this truth deeply. Before others listen to your words, they listen to your presence. So the purpose of this chapter is simple, yet profound, to teach you how to shape the emotional atmosphere that surrounds your voice. Because people follow the feeling you create long before they follow your ideas. Let's begin with this truth. Your voice becomes a mirror of your internal weather. If your mind is chaotic, your tone becomes sharp. If your heart is unsettled, your rhythm becomes rushed. If your emotions are unstable, your message becomes fragmented. But when your inner world is calm, your communication becomes a place of safety. Your tone becomes steady, your pace becomes thoughtful, your words become clear. People breathe easier around you, not because you know everything, but because you carry yourself like someone who can navigate anything. Think of a leader you admire. Picture them. Think about how you felt the moment they entered a room. Did they radiate panic? Did they pour out insecurity? Did they fill the space with tension? Probably not. The leaders we remember, the leaders who move us, all share a quiet strength. They bring emotional order to chaotic situations. They bring presence, not pressure, warmth, not noise, clarity, not confusion. Leadership communication begins with this choice. What emotional experience do you want people to have in your presence? And whether you intend it or not, you are always creating one. People may forget your words, but they will never forget how your presence made them feel. And that feeling begins the moment your voice enters the space. This chapter is about mastering that feeling. Let's break it down into the 3 layers that shape the atmosphere of your communication. Layer 1, your emotional grounding. This is the anchor of your leadership presence. When you are centered, others feel held, even in uncertainty. Grounding does not mean pretending everything is perfect. It means being stable enough to navigate what isn't. Your steadiness becomes contagious. Layer 2, your intention. Before you speak, ask yourself, what do I want this moment to feel like? Not what do I want to say, but what emotion do I want to create? Is it clarity, reassurance, motivation, connection? When your intention is aligned, your words naturally follow. Layer 3, your energy. Every voice carries an emotional temperature. Some voices warm the room, some cool it, some ignite it, some dim it. Leaders consciously choose their energy. They know their tone is not an accident. It is a tool. Use it to uplift, not overwhelm, to calm, not confuse, to inspire, not impress. When these 3 layers align, you're grounding your intention and your energy. Your voice becomes a force of stability and confidence. People start to sense your leadership without you needing to announce it. Now let's make this personal. Think about your everyday interactions, family conversations, workplace discussions, even brief exchanges with strangers. In each moment, you are sending out an atmosphere. Maybe it's warmth, maybe it's tension, maybe it's confidence or uncertainty, maybe it's encouragement or impatience. The question is not, do I create an atmosphere? You always do. The real question is, what atmosphere am I choosing to create? And this is where transformation begins. Because once you become aware of the atmosphere you create, you can begin shaping it deliberately, intentionally, powerfully. When you speak with awareness of your emotional impact, your voice becomes more than a vehicle for words. It becomes an environment where people feel safe enough to listen, where they feel inspired enough to act, where they feel respected enough to trust, where they feel motivated enough to follow. This is what makes the communication of a leader different from everyone else. They don't just express themselves, they influence the emotional temperature of the moment. And here's the truth that changes everything. People don't follow ideas, they follow the energy behind them. So as you move forward on this journey, remember this. The first step in talking like a leader isn't speaking louder. It's bringing clarity to your emotional presence. It's walking into a room, knowing that your energy sets the tone. It's realizing that your voice, your calm, your intention, they all create an atmosphere that people feel before they ever understand your message. And when you master that atmosphere, your influence expands effortlessly. Your voice becomes a place people trust, a place people return to, a place people rely on. In the next chapter, we will explore how leaders use this emotional atmosphere to guide difficult conversations, how they stay steady when stakes are high, how they communicate with courage when truth is uncomfortable, and how they navigate tension with clarity instead of pressure. Because the real test of leadership isn't when things are calm, it's when the room is full of storm. Chapter 4. Leading through difficult conversations. There are moments in life when words suddenly feel heavier, moments when the air in the room thickens, the stakes rise, and every sentence carries consequences, a confession that needs to be made, a truth that needs to be spoken, a misunderstanding that needs to be cleared, a boundary that needs to be set. These are the conversations most people avoid, but leaders walk toward them. Picture this. You're standing at the edge of a conversation you don't want to have. Your heart beats louder, your thoughts race ahead, you rehearse every possible outcome, imagining the worst. There's a tension inside you, pulling you away from the moment, urging you to stay silent. But silence won't move you forward. Silence won't resolve the conflict. Silence won't build trust. This is the moment where leadership is tested. Not in your confidence when everything is easy, but in your courage when everything is uncomfortable. Difficult conversations are not obstacles, they are thresholds, and every leader must cross them. The purpose of this chapter is to reveal something most people never realize. Your power as a communicator is not measured by how you speak when it's easy, but by how you speak when the room feels heavy. A leader does not run from tension. They navigate through it with clarity, respect, and emotional strength. Let's begin with the truth that grounds all difficult conversations. Your goal is not to win the moment. Your goal is to strengthen the relationship, the direction, or the understanding within the moment. This shift in intention changes everything. When you remove the need to win, you remove pressure. When you remove pressure, your tone softens. When your tone softens, the other person becomes more receptive. And when they are more receptive, you can create real transformation. To speak like a leader during difficult moments, you must master 3 inner disciplines. Discipline 1. Stay anchored. Even when emotions rise, people think the hardest part of a difficult conversation is finding the right words. It's not. The hardest part is managing the emotional wave that rises inside you, the instinct to defend, the urge to retreat, the impulse to react instead of respond. Leaders don't drown in that wave, they breathe through it, they slow down, they choose steadiness over reaction. Because the calmer you remain, the clearer your mind becomes, and clarity is your greatest ally in a heated moment. Discipline 2. Speak truth without breaking connection. There is a myth that honesty must be blunt or brutal, but leaders understand something deeper. Truth delivered with compassion becomes easier to hear. Truth wrapped in respect becomes easier to accept. Truth spoken with intention becomes a bridge, not a weapon. The goal is not to avoid discomfort. Discomfort is part of growth. The goal is to preserve dignity while pursuing clarity, and this balance is what separates leaders from everyone else. Discipline 3. Listen like someone who wants to understand. Most people listen with one goal: to respond. Leaders listen with a different goal: to understand, because understanding dissolves defensiveness. It lowers tension. It opens space for resolution. The most powerful thing you can do in a difficult conversation is make the other person feel heard, not agreed with, not validated in everything, just heard. Because once a person feels heard, they stop fighting to be understood. And once they stop fighting, you can finally move forward together. Now let's talk about the emotional atmosphere you bring into difficult conversations. Because everything you've learned so far merges here. When you enter a tough discussion with defensiveness, the atmosphere tightens. When you enter with fear, the atmosphere becomes fragile. But when you enter with calm determination, the atmosphere becomes manageable. You transform tension into opportunity. Imagine this scene. Two people sit across from each other, frustration between them like an invisible wall. Their tones sharpen, their shoulders tense. Every word feels like stepping through broken glass. But then, one person pauses, breathes, softens their tone, leans into understanding rather than reaction. Suddenly the atmosphere shifts. The room becomes safer, more open, more human. One person's leadership unlocks both sides. That is what you are learning to do. Not just speak like a leader, but stabilize like a leader. You become the emotional anchor in the conversation. The person who doesn't escalate. The person who doesn't crumble. The person who remains grounded, compassionate and clear, even when the moment is tense. And here's a truth many people overlook. When you lead a difficult conversation well, your influence deepens, respect grows, trust strengthens. People begin to see you as someone they can rely on, not just in peaceful moments, but in storms, because anyone can speak well when the room is calm, but only a leader speaks well when the room feels like it might break. As we close this chapter, I want you to remember this. Every difficult conversation you face is an opportunity, a doorway into deeper influence, deeper respect, and deeper authenticity. When you learn to navigate discomfort with courage, when you learn to speak truth with compassion, when you learn to stay steady in emotional storms, your voice becomes more than a voice. It becomes a guiding force, a grounding presence, a source of clarity in a world full of noise. And in the next chapter, we will explore how leaders shape their words, not only to handle tension, but to inspire movement, how great communicators turn language into momentum, and conversations into catalysts for action. Chapter 5. The moment you decide to rise. There comes a moment in every life when the world seems to pause, as if holding its breath, waiting for you to choose who you will become. You feel it in your chest, that quiet pressure, that faint throb of possibility mixed with fear. It's the moment when you realize that staying the same is more painful than changing. It's the moment when the excuses fall apart, the distractions fade, and you can no longer pretend you don't know what you must do. This moment is not loud. It doesn't arrive with trumpets or applause. It appears softly, like a whisper that grows heavier each day. And yet it's one of the most powerful turning points in your entire existence. Because the moment you decide to rise, truly rise, everything in your life begins to shift. We often imagine transformation as a dramatic event, something big and unforgettable. But in reality, it usually begins in an ordinary hour, on an ordinary day, in the middle of an ordinary life. You wake up, look at yourself, and realize you can no longer postpone your own potential. You can no longer betray the calling that refuses to leave you alone. Something inside you demands more, insists on more, and refuses to be quiet any longer. This chapter is about that moment, the decision to rise. Not someday, not when life gets easier, not when you feel ready, but now. Even if your voice shakes, even if your hands tremble, even if you carry doubts like heavy stones in your pockets. Because rising isn't about having confidence, it's about having courage. Confidence is something you build late. Courage is the spark that gets you moving when nothing makes sense yet. Courage is what whispers, try, even when your fears scream, don't you dare. And here's the truth most people never understand. The decision to rise does not happen in your mind. It happens in your spirit. It's the moment when something deep inside you finally says, enough, enough waiting, enough shrinking, enough settling, enough pretending the life you dream about is impossible. It's the moment you reclaim your right to grow. You don't rise because you have everything figured out. You rise because you're no longer willing to live another day as a smaller version of yourself. You rise because something in you knows, unmistakably, that you were meant for more than drifting through your day. You rise because your potential is knocking, and you finally decided to open the door. Think about the times you postponed your dreams, not because you didn't want them, but because you thought you had time. You told yourself you'd start later. You'd start when you felt inspired. You'd start when the path became clear. But the path never becomes clear before you take the first step. Life reveals the road only after you start walking. Rising is an internal shift before it becomes an external change. You will feel it before anyone sees it. You will know it before anyone understands it. That's why rising often feels lonely. Not because you're alone, but because you're stepping into a version of yourself that others haven't met yet. Some people won't understand your decision to grow. They'll be comfortable with the old you, the predictable you, the familiar you. But the moment you begin to rise, you break the pattern. You rewrite the expectations. You challenge the limits they unconsciously placed on you. That's why rising requires strength. Not the strength to fight others, but the strength to stay true to your path, even when others don't see what you see. And here's what I want you to understand clearly, deeply, without hesitation. Your rise does not need permission. Not from the world, not from your path, not from the people around you. The permission you've been waiting for is your own. You give it to yourself the moment you decide to move forward, one honest step at a time. Maybe this chapter is arriving at the exact moment you needed it. Maybe something in your heart has been restless, repeating the same quiet message you've been trying to ignore. It's time to stop delaying your growth, time to stop dimming your potential, time to trust the fire that refuses to die inside you. Listen to that fire. It's the most honest part of you. And understand this: when you choose to rise, you are not starting from weakness. You are starting from awakening. You are meeting yourself again with new eyes. You are reclaiming your life from hesitation and stepping into a story written with intention instead of fear. The moment you decide to rise may feel small, but its impact is immeasurable. That decision becomes the seed of every future victory, every future lesson, every future transformation. That single moment becomes the reason you eventually stand tall in places you once thought you'd never reach. And as you rise, a new clarity begins to form. You start seeing possibilities you ignored before. You start feeling strength you didn't know you had. You start recognizing patterns that held you back for years. Rising doesn't just change your direction. It changes your vision. It changes the way you see your life, your challenges, and your own power. So let me ask you, gently, sincerely, boldly, is right now that moment for you? Only you can answer that. But if something inside you is stirring, if something inside you is shifting, if you feel even the slightest spark telling you to step forward, honor it, trust it, don't silence it. That spark is the beginning of your rise. Because the truth is simple: no one can rise for you. No one can decide for you. No one can step into your future except you. But once you make that decision, once you choose to rise, the rest of your journey begins to unfold with a power you can feel in your bones. And now, as this chapter comes to its close, I want you to carry one quiet realization with you. The moment you decide to rise is not just a choice, it's a promise to yourself, a promise to your growth, a promise to the life waiting for you on the other side of fear. Hold that promise gently, hold it firmly, and step forward with the knowing that something greater is beginning within you. Because in the next chapter we step into a deeper truth, the truth of what you must release in order to fully rise. Chapter 6. What you must let go to become who you're meant to be. There comes a moment on every path of growth when you realize this truth. You cannot rise while your hands are still full of what weighs you down. And sometimes the heaviest burdens are not the things you carry on your back, but the things you hold inside your heart. Think of a balloon trying to lift itself into the sky. It has the potential, it has the lightness, it has the design for flight. But a single string tied to a single stone is enough to keep it from ever leaving the ground. In life, those stones are often invisible. Old stories you keep repeating to yourself, wounds you've memorized, people you've outgrown but still cling to, fears you treat as if they're facts, regrets you refuse to release, and identities you've outlived but continue to wear like second skin. This chapter is about those stones. It is about learning what must be released, so that your rise, the rise you chose in the last chapter, can actually happen. Letting go is not a soft process. It is not gentle. It is not effortless. It is courageous work, the kind that challenges your honesty, tests your loyalty to your future, and demands that you stop protecting the parts of you that were only meant to be temporary. You see, growth doesn't begin when you add something new. Growth begins when you remove what no longer belongs. Most people try to evolve while clinging to everything they've ever been. They carry who they were, who others said they should be, and who they're afraid of becoming, all at once. They hold on to all of it, hoping change will magically fit into an already overcrowded life. But transformation has a price. You must choose what stays and what goes. Let me tell you something deeply human and deeply true. Your mind will try to convince you that holding on keeps you safe, but holding on often keeps you stuck. Think about the stories you tell yourself, the ones whispered in the quiet moments, the ones you rarely admit out loud. Stories like, "I'm not ready, I don't deserve more, this is just how my life is, this is who I've always been." These things don't happen for people like me. Those stories are not your truth, they are your rope, and every rope has a knot tied to something in your past. It might be a mistake you've replayed so many times, it became a part of your identity. It might be a disappointment that taught you to expect less from life. It might even be a person, someone who gave you comfort once, but now holds you back in ways they don't even realize. Some attachments don't look harmful at first glance. They look familiar, they look stable, they look like home. But the truth is, familiarity can become a cage if you're not careful. Letting go doesn't always mean cutting people off or walking away dramatically. Sometimes letting go simply means releasing your emotional attachment to outcomes you can't control, or forgiving yourself for the times you didn't know better, or accepting that certain chapters of your life are complete, no matter how tightly you try to keep them open. Letting go is not abandonment, it's alignment. It's choosing the version of yourself that wants to grow rather than the version that wants to stay comfortable. And here's what many people don't realize. Letting go is an act of self-respect. It's the moment you tell life, I am ready for something truer, something deeper, something more aligned with who I am becoming. I want you to picture yourself standing at a door. Behind you is everything you've already lived. The memories, the mistakes, the habits, the heartbreaks, the expectations placed on you by others. In front of you is the life you haven't lived yet, expansive, unknown, filled with potential. You cannot walk through that doorway with both arms wrapped around the past. You must decide what to carry forward and what to finally set down. Sometimes the thing you need to let go of is your own resistance. That part of you that fears change because it remembers the pain of trying before. But here's the truth. Your past attempts do not define your future capability. The fact that you've been hurt does not mean you are incapable. The fact that something once failed does not mean it will always fail. You are allowed to rise without dragging every lesson like a chain behind you. And maybe, just maybe, the reason your growth has felt so heavy is because you've been trying to climb while holding on to things meant to stay at the bottom. Listen closely. Letting go is not about losing. It's about clearing space. Space for new strength. Space for new identity. Space for new opportunities that cannot enter a life crowded with old weight. So ask yourself, what am I holding on to that keeps me from rising freely? What belief do I carry that no longer feels like truth? What version of myself have I outgrown, yet still protect out of habit? What fear masquerades as caution, but is really a limiter on my potential? Your answers may not come immediately, but the questions alone begin the process of release. And when you start to let go even just a little, you will feel something remarkable, a lightness, a clarity, a quiet strength that emerges not from force, but from freedom. You'll realize that letting go didn't take anything away from you. It simply returned you to yourself. And now, as this chapter closes, carry this understanding with you. You cannot rise while gripping what was only meant to be temporary. Your hands must open before your life, because in the next chapter we explore the next step. The step after release, the step that transforms intention into movement, the courage to take the first real action toward the life calling your name. Chapter 7. The first brave step. Every transformation has a defining moment. A moment when the mind stops imagining, the heart stops hesitating, and the body finally moves. Not tomorrow, not someday, but now. Imagine standing at the edge of a vast, open path. You've released what held you down. You've untied the ropes. You've lightened the weight. And for the first time in a long time, you feel the space inside your chest, the space where courage can breathe again. But here's the truth most people never say out loud. The moment right before your first step is often the moment that feels the most terrifying, because stepping forward means stepping away, away from the known, away from the predictable, away from the version of yourself that felt safe, simply because it was familiar. And yet, this is the moment that shapes the rest of the journey. The first step is more than movement. It is a declaration, a message to your life, your past, and your future that says, I choose to live awake. I choose to live on purpose. There is nothing small about that choice. It is the quiet, powerful beginning of every story worth telling. Think about the people you admire, not the ones with perfect lives, but the ones with deep lives. They all have one thing in common. There was a moment when they stepped forward, without knowing the outcome, but trusting that the journey itself would reveal what they needed. You might believe courage is a loud force, a battle cry, a bold gesture, a fearless march, but the truth is more human than that. Courage is often a whisper, a subtle shift, a single decision made in a quiet room when no one is watching. It's that moment when you say to yourself, I don't know what comes next, but staying here is no longer an option. The world rarely witnesses your first step, but your life feels it instantly. The energy changes, the direction changes, you change. That shift doesn't have to be dramatic. It doesn't have to make sense to anyone else. The first step is not about proving anything. It is about beginning. But beginning requires something many overlook: permission. Permission to try. Permission to be imperfect. Permission to learn as you go. Permission to take a step, even if you don't have the next 10 figured out. No one is born knowing the whole path. You discover the path only by walking it. So let's talk about the fear that hides beneath the surface. Not the fear of failure, that one's obvious, but the quieter fear, the fear of success. The fear that says, what if I become someone I don't recognize? What if this changes everything? What if I actually rise? That fear is normal. It shows up anytime you are about to grow beyond your own limits. It shows up when your soul has already outgrown its old container and is stretching into new space. But here's the part you must hear. Fear does not disappear before you take your first step. It disappears because you take your first step. Action reshapes fear. Movement interrupts doubt. The moment you begin, the mind is forced to reorganize itself around possibility instead of limitation. That is the power of a single step. Let's make this real, not abstract. Think about one thing, just one, that you know your future self will thank you for starting today. It might be healing, it might be discipline, it might be a project, a decision, a boundary, a promise to yourself. Whatever it is, feel it calling you. Now imagine yourself taking the first step toward it. Not perfect, not polished, just honest. Feel that shift in your body, that subtle but unmistakable awakening. That is your life, responding to your courage. Every great change begins exactly like this, with a human being who decided to move before they felt completely ready. And here's something beautiful. The first step doesn't have to be large. It just has to be yours. Your step, taken with your intention, toward your future. No one can define it. No one can take it for you. And no one can take it away once it's done. People often wait for motivation, inspiration, or clarity to appear before they act. But the truth is more powerful than that. Clarity comes from action. Direction comes from action. Strength comes from action. And the life you want, it begins the moment you finally move. So ask yourself gently, what is the smallest, truest step I can take today? Not a perfect step, a real one. Not a dramatic leap, a meaningful one. Because real courage is not measured by size, it's measured by sincerity. Chapter 8. The Power of Internal Alignment. There comes a moment in every journey when the noise of the world becomes too loud, too demanding, too overwhelming to ignore, and yet, somehow, your own inner voice becomes the quietest it has ever been. It's a strange feeling to be surrounded by sound, pressure, and expectations, while the part of you that knows the truth whispers beneath it all, waiting for you to finally listen. This chapter begins right there, in that invisible space between who you are and who you're becoming, because the greatest breakthroughs in life do not happen in front of others. They happen inside you, in the silence, in the honesty, in the conversations you have with yourself when no one else is listening. Today, you step into that inner room. Not the room defined by fear, not the room shaped by doubt or disappointment, but the room where your deepest truth lives, the truth that has been asking for your attention for years. You may not realize it yet, but everything you want, everything you dream of, everything you've been fighting for, is impossible to sustain until your internal world comes into alignment. And alignment is not about perfection. Alignment is about harmony. The harmony between what you think, what you feel, and what you choose. When those three pieces move together, life flows. When they move separately, life becomes heavy. This is the chapter where we lift that weight. Think about the moments in your life when you felt frustrated, stuck, or conflicted. If you look closely, you'll see that the pain wasn't just from the situation itself, it was from the inner conflict behind it. When your mind says one thing, your heart says another, and your actions follow neither, you create an internal storm that drains your energy without mercy. But when your thoughts align with your truth, and your actions align with your purpose, something powerful happens. You stop fighting yourself. And in that moment, you discover strength you didn't even know you had. Alignment begins with acceptance, the courage to look at your life without filters, not with judgment, not with shame, but with honesty. The kind of honesty that clears your vision and returns you to yourself. Maybe you've been holding on to expectations that were never yours to carry. Maybe you've been chasing goals that didn't come from your heart. Maybe you've been walking a path that kept you busy, but not fulfilled. Internal alignment invites you to ask, is this truly mine? Is this truly me? Is this the life I want to grow into? These questions are not small. They are the questions that shape destinies. Because the moment you stop living on autopilot is the moment you reclaim authorship of your story. Every transformation begins with clarity. And clarity can feel uncomfortable at first, because it exposes what we've been afraid to admit. But clarity is also freeing, because it shows you the path you were meant to walk all along, and once you see that path, it becomes impossible to unsee it. Internal alignment doesn't ask you to become someone new. It asks you to return to who you truly are beneath the layers of survival, fear, and expectations. It asks you to reconnect with the version of yourself that wanted more, not because of pressure, but because of possibility. When your inner world aligns, the world outside you begins to shift. Your decisions become clearer, your emotions become steadier, your actions become intentional, your energy stops leaking into doubt, regret, or resistance. You begin to move through life with quiet confidence, not loud, not forceful, but grounded, a confidence that comes from knowing you are living in truth, even if the whole world doesn't understand it yet. And here's the beautiful thing. Internal alignment doesn't require a perfect life. It requires a present life. It requires slowing down long enough to hear yourself again. It requires releasing what no longer grows you. It requires saying yes to what calls you forward, even when you're scared. Whatever you seek, peace, success, healing, purpose, it all begins inside, not outside, not in the opinions of others, not in achievements or validation, but in the quiet inner decision to align your life with your truth. And when you do, everything changes, not instantly but inevitably. This chapter is your invitation to realign, to listen, to return to yourself, to trust that the deepest part of you already knows the way. Take a moment right now, just to breathe, because alignment is not something you force. It is something you allow. Let this chapter be the turning point, the moment you stopped running from yourself and started walking with yourself. And as you step forward, bring this truth with you. When your inner world becomes clear, your outer world begins to follow. Now you are ready for what comes next. The deeper work, the stronger clarity, and the next awakening waiting just beyond this moment. In the next chapter, we step into that awakening together. Chapter 9. The moment you rise above yourself. There comes a moment, often quiet, often unnoticed by the world, when something inside you shifts. A moment when the weight you've been carrying for years suddenly feels lighter, not because the burden changed, but because you did. It's the moment when you stop living from the outside in and begin living from the inside out. The moment when, for the first time in a long time, you finally feel yourself rise. This chapter begins in that sacred moment, the exact point where inner alignment transforms into inner elevation. Because once you align with your truth, a new kind of strength awakens in you, a strength that doesn't shout, doesn't demand, doesn't break. It rises, quietly, certain, unmistakably. And when it rises, your entire life begins to shift with it. You see, growth is not just about becoming better. Growth is about becoming higher, about reaching a version of yourself that sees more, feels more, understands more, A version that makes choices from clarity instead of confusion, from intention instead of impulse. This chapter is about that elevation, the rise of your inner self. Think about the times you've been overwhelmed, pressured, or emotionally pulled in different directions. In those moments, it wasn't just circumstances holding you down. It was the version of you that was responding to them. A version reacting from old wounds, old fears, old patterns. But once you rise above those patterns, everything changes. Not because the world becomes easier, but because you become stronger than the world that once weighed you down. Rising above yourself does not mean escaping your emotions or denying your past. It means outgrowing the version of you that was shaped by survival. It means stepping into the version shaped by intention, vision, and truth. There are levels within you, levels of strength, wisdom, and awareness that you haven't even touched yet. And every challenge you face is not there to break you, but to reveal the next level of who you are becoming. When you rise above yourself, you begin to see life from a higher floor. The same problems look smaller, the same fears feel softer, the same doubts lose their power. Because elevation changes your perspective, and perspective changes your entire relationship with life. Consider this. When you're on the ground level, every obstacle looks massive, every setback feels personal, every mistake becomes a wound. But climb even one level higher, and suddenly what once felt impossible becomes manageable. Climb a few levels more, and what once consumed you becomes something you barely remember. Your power was never gone, it was simply waiting for you to rise high enough to reach it. Elevation begins with a single internal shift, the decision to stop reacting and start choosing, to stop repeating the past and start shaping the future, to stop moving from fear and start moving from awareness. This is where your transformation deepens, not in the external changes others can see, but in the invisible inner changes that only you can feel. Rising above yourself means choosing growth over comfort, healing over hiding, understanding over judgment, direction over distraction, purpose over impulse. It means becoming someone who no longer fights for control, but flows with clarity. And the truth is, you've already begun. By listening to these words, by sitting with your own reflections, by daring to look inward, you're already stepping onto a higher floor of your own life. You may not feel it yet, but the rise has started. Because rising is not a leap, it is a steady unfolding, a gentle but powerful shift in how you think, how you feel, and how you respond. You rise when you forgive what hurt you. You rise when you release what limits you. You rise when you stop settling. You rise when you choose not to shrink. You rise when you trust yourself enough to take the next step, even when you can't see the whole path. And as you rise, something extraordinary happens. Life stops happening to you and begins happening through you. You no longer move as the old self struggling to survive. You move as a higher self designed to grow. This chapter is your reminder that elevation is not a destination. It is a direction, a way of living, a way of thinking, a way of being. It is the moment you realize you are no longer who you used to be, and not yet who you are becoming, but beautifully, powerfully, courageously in between. That in between is where your strength expands, where your authenticity deepens, where your future self starts to breathe. You are rising, not in noise, but in truth, not in comparison, but in clarity, not in perfection, but in purpose. Let this chapter be the moment you recognize your own ascent. Feel it, claim it, let it guide you forward, because from this point on, your life is not about who you were, it is about who you are becoming. And in the next chapter we step into that becoming, the unfolding of your next, higher self, waiting just beyond this moment. Chapter 10. The Art of Speaking with Authority. There is a moment, often unnoticed, when words transform from noise into power, when the way you speak becomes more than communication, it becomes influence, it becomes clarity, it becomes presence. Imagine walking into a room and feeling the energy shift, not because you demand it, but because the very sound of your voice carries weight, meaning and truth. That is the art of speaking with authority. Authority is not about volume, it is not about dominating or overpowering, it is about resonance. It is about aligning your words with your presence, your intention, and your authenticity. When you speak from this place, even silence becomes part of your influence. Pauses are not emptiness, they are the spaces where attention gathers, where understanding blooms, where your presence is felt. Speaking like a leader begins long before the words leave your mouth. It begins in thought. It begins in clarity. It begins in self-respect. Every phrase you utter is a reflection of the inner alignment we explored in the previous chapters. If your mind is scattered, your words will falter. If your heart is unsettled, your voice will betray uncertainty. Authority begins when the internal world becomes steady, when you know your truth and speak it without apology. Consider the leaders you admire, not only for their achievements, but for the way they communicate. Notice how they do not rush to fill silence, how they do not over-explain, how they choose words with precision. There is a rhythm, a cadence, a measured confidence in every sentence. That is intentional speaking. That is leadership through speech. That is the power that moves people, ideas, and outcomes. And yet, it is not simply what you say, but how you carry yourself as you speak. Your posture, your eye contact, the subtle gestures, all of these amplify or diminish your authority. Speaking like a leader is a full-body experience. It is energy, it is presence, it is awareness. When you combine presence with clarity, your words no longer need to fight for attention. Attention comes to them naturally. Let's address the fear that often blocks our voice. Many of us hesitate to speak fully, to express our truth, because we fear judgment, rejection, or error. But consider this: every great leader, every influential communicator has faced that fear. What separates them is not the absence of fear, but the willingness to speak anyway. Courage is not only stepping forward physically or professionally, it is stepping forward vocally, standing in your truth, even when uncertainty lingers. Now imagine the impact of speaking with intention in your daily life. In conversations, meetings, presentations, even casual interactions, when your words are chosen with care, when your delivery is deliberate, when your tone carries conviction, you do not just participate in the dialogue, you shape it. Authority does not demand obedience, it invites respect. It does not seek attention, it commands focus naturally. A crucial component of this skill is listening. The most commanding voices are often born from the deepest listening. To speak with authority, you must first hear not only the words of others, but the silence between them, the unsaid emotions, the underlying currents of thought. True leaders respond, not react. They absorb context, they understand nuances, and then they speak in a way that moves others toward clarity and action. Another key is simplicity. Complexity does not impress, clarity does. The leader's voice is like a lens. It focuses scattered energy. It brings ideas into sharp relief. It illuminates what matters most. Avoid filler. Avoid overcomplication. Speak what is essential. Speak what is truthful. Speak what aligns with both your heart and mind. When your words are distilled to their purpose, their weight increases, their impact deepens, and your authority becomes undeniable. Consider the rhythm of your speech. Fast, shallow delivery creates tension, uncertainty, and distraction. Slow, deliberate speech conveys confidence, patience, and presence. The pauses, those strategic spaces between sentences, are not gaps. They are powerful tools. They allow your message to resonate. They give listeners the opportunity to absorb, reflect, and internalize your words. Pauses are not hesitation. They are mastery. Emotion is also your ally. Speaking with authority does not mean removing humanity from your voice. It means harnessing emotion with awareness, passion, calmness, empathy, conviction. When combined with clarity, these qualities create magnetism. Your voice becomes a bridge between intellect and heart, between thought and feeling, between intention and action. Finally, practice alignment. Speak only when your words reflect your inner truth. Speak only when your intention is clear. Speak only when your energy matches your message. Leadership is revealed in consistency, in the congruence between what you believe, how you act, and what you say. This alignment cannot be faked. It cannot be rushed. It must be cultivated, patiently, intentionally, until your voice naturally carries authority. So, as you stand in the moments ahead, conversations, meetings, presentations, or even quiet discussions, remember that authority begins within. Your inner alignment, your clarity of thought, your courage to speak, and your intentional presence all converge in the sound of your voice. When these elements unite, you will not only speak, you will lead. And now, with this understanding, you are ready to explore the deeper layers of influence, presence, and leadership in the next chapters, where your words become actions, your actions inspire trust, and your presence transforms every room you enter. Chapter 11. Listening, the hidden superpower of leaders. There is a sound in every room that most people ignore. A sound so subtle, so easy to overlook, yet so powerful that those who master it can influence, inspire, and transform everything around them. That sound is not the clatter of voices. It is not the loud proclamation of authority. It is silence, the art of listening. This chapter begins in that silence, in the space between words, between breaths, between moments, where truth lives quietly, waiting to be heard. Listening is not passive. It is not simply waiting for your turn to speak. Listening is active, intentional, and profoundly powerful. It is the superpower hidden in every great leader's skill set. Think about the conversations you remember most in your life. Not the ones where someone talked endlessly, but the ones where you felt understood. The ones where you felt understood. The ones where every word seemed to matter. That feeling of being truly heard is the secret to influence. People remember how you make them feel far more than the words you say. And to make them feel heard, you must first truly hear them. Listening requires more than ears. It demands presence. It demands empathy. It demands an understanding that communication is a two-way street. When you speak, people listen. When you listen, they open. When you listen deeply, your presence itself becomes magnetic, drawing people toward clarity, trust, and connection. Every leader, every influencer, every person who has inspired change understands this principle. Their words carry weight because they are grounded in understanding. They speak not to fill a void, but to respond. Their authority is born not from what they demand attention for, but from what they earn by first giving attention. And yet, true listening is rare. Most people hear only to reply, to react, to reinforce their own opinions. But when you listen to understand, when you absorb every nuance of tone, posture, and intent, you enter a space of quiet mastery. That space allows you to respond with precision, relevance, and empathy. It allows you to lead without force, to influence without pressure. Imagine a room where you are fully present, fully attentive. Imagine catching the subtleties of someone's hesitation, the unspoken weight behind their words, the dreams and fears they cannot voice aloud. That is where transformation begins. Not in your words, but in your ability to hold the room with your presence, to make others feel safe enough to reveal truth. Listening is also about timing. There is a rhythm to every conversation, a cadence to every exchange. Speed too soon, and your words fall on unready minds. Speak too late, and opportunity is lost. But when you listen intently, the right words come at the right moment. The pauses you create are not empty. They are pregnant with possibility. They allow ideas to mature, understanding to deepen, and trust to flourish. Beyond conversations, listening applies to life itself. Every challenge, every setback, every unexpected moment carries a lesson. When you listen to life, you begin to notice patterns, uncover opportunities, and perceive solutions that were invisible before. Listening trains the mind to discern, the heart to empathize, and the spirit to act wisely. The power of listening is also amplified by humility. You do not listen to dominate or to manipulate. You listen to understand, to learn, to grow. You listen not to respond, but to connect. Leaders who listen without agenda cultivate loyalty, respect, and alignment. They inspire others, not because they speak the loudest, but because they listen the deepest. And here is a subtle truth. The quieter you are willing to be, the more powerful your voice becomes. Listening does not diminish you. It elevates you. It strengthens your authority, sharpens your insight, and deepens your relationships. Every word you eventually speak carries more weight because it is informed, intentional, and aligned with what truly matters. Practicing deep listening requires discipline. It requires patience. In a world that prizes speed over understanding, it requires resisting the urge to interrupt, to judge, or to dismiss. Instead, you must cultivate curiosity. You must observe without bias. You must allow silence to breathe and meaning to emerge. When mastered, listening transforms leadership from a role into a force. It allows you to inspire action, foster collaboration, and build trust that cannot be bought. It shifts your interactions from transactional to transformational. It turns ordinary conversations into moments that linger, influence, and shape lives. So, as you move forward from this chapter, consider your own listening, not just hearing, but truly hearing, not just observing, but absorbing, not just reacting, but understanding. Every room, every meeting, every dialogue holds the potential for impact if you choose to listen as deeply as a leader. And remember this, the moment you listen first, speak second, and act third, you step into a power far greater than words alone can provide. That is the hidden superpower, the force that connects your presence with your purpose, your influence with your integrity, and your vision with the hearts of those you lead. Your journey into mastery of voice, presence, and influence continues in the next chapter, where we explore how actions, when aligned with words and intentions, create unstoppable leadership momentum. Chapter 12. Actions speak louder, leading through what you do. Imagine a leader standing at the front of a room, words flowing effortlessly, ideas articulated with precision, yet something feels incomplete. People nod politely, yet the energy lacks conviction. The truth is simple. Words alone are fragile. Authority without action is empty. Influence without follow-through fades. To truly lead, you must act deliberately, consistently, and aligned with your words. This chapter begins with that alignment, the harmony between speech and action. Leadership is not an abstract concept. It is not a title, a position, or even a reputation. It is behavior. Every decision you make, every step you take, Every choice you enact broadcasts a message louder than any speech could. People watch, they feel, they respond to the reality of your actions, not the promise of your words. Consider a scenario. A manager inspires their team with eloquent speeches about dedication, integrity, and excellence. Yet, when deadlines loom, corners are cut. When challenges arise, accountability is avoided. The disconnect is immediate. The team senses the contradiction. Authority evaporates. Words without action create doubt, not trust. Your actions must mirror your message, or your influence is compromised. Action begins with clarity of purpose. You must know not only what you want to achieve, but why. Vision without clarity produces sporadic effort. Clarity without action produces stagnation. When you act with intentionality, your presence alone communicates leadership. The subtleties of commitment, discipline, and follow-through speak louder than the most persuasive arguments. Leadership through action also demands consistency. One act of courage is inspiring, but repeated acts of integrity build trust. One instance of decisiveness may impress, but habitual decisiveness commands respect. Authority is cumulative. It grows in proportion to the alignment between what you profess and what you practice. Every choice you make reinforces or undermines the message you intend to convey. It is not only the grand gestures that define leadership, but the everyday behaviors: showing up on time, honoring promises, listening when others speak, providing guidance without condescension. These actions, small yet significant, reveal the character behind the words. People may forget what you said, but they never forget what you did. Equally important is courage in action. Words without bravery are hollow. To lead through action is to confront fear, uncertainty, and discomfort head-on. It is to make decisions others avoid, to take responsibility for outcomes beyond your control, and to remain steadfast when the path is unclear. Courageous action inspires others to move, to follow, and to believe in what is possible. Another dimension is intentional influence. Acting as a leader is not about control, but about creating an environment where others can excel. Actions speak in mentorship, support, and empowerment. When you invest in others, provide guidance through example, and model the behavior you wish to see, your influence multiplies exponentially. Leadership becomes a ripple effect, carried forward by those who witness and emulate your integrity. Reflection is also part of action. Acting blindly without evaluation or adjustment risks misalignment with your purpose. Great leaders act, observe, and refine. They learn from outcomes, adapt to evolving circumstances, and continually calibrate their efforts to align with both vision and values. Action without reflection is movement. Action with reflection is mastery. Consider the subtleties of timing. Effective leadership recognizes that not every moment demands immediate action. Some situations require patience, observation, and preparation. Knowing when to act and when to wait is as crucial as knowing how to act. Impulsive action can undermine credibility. Measured action strengthens it. Timing, like alignment, is a language of leadership in itself. Finally, embrace accountability. Acting as a leader is inseparable from taking responsibility. When outcomes succeed, celebrate the effort, but never claim sole credit. When outcomes fail, own the consequences, learn and demonstrate resilience. Accountability is the proof of authenticity. It tells the world that your words are not hollow, that your principles are not negotiable, and that your leadership is real. As you internalize this principle, consider the power of small, deliberate actions over time. Each choice, each gesture, each effort compounds, building authority, trust, and influence. Action becomes your signature, a visible reflection of your internal values, a beacon others can rely upon. By embracing action as the true expression of leadership, you bridge the gap between promise and reality, between vision and execution, between influence and impact. Your words carry meaning, not because of their eloquence, but because they are validated by what you consistently do. In the next chapter, we will explore how the alignment of voice, listening and action creates a presence so compelling that it naturally draws people toward your vision, a presence that transforms leadership from a concept into an experience others cannot ignore. Chapter 13. The Power of Presence. Commanding the room without a word. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine entering a room. You don't speak, yet people notice. Heads turn, conversations pause, energy shifts. Presence, the unspoken authority that draws attention, respect and focus, is one of the most potent tools a leader can possess. It's not about dominance, or volume, or even charisma. It's about alignment, the seamless integration of your intentions, your energy, and your awareness into a force that others naturally respond to. This chapter is dedicated to exploring that force. The force of presence. Leadership is more than what you say, more than what you do. It is how you inhabit the space around you. People respond to what they feel before they process what they hear. Presence communicates confidence, clarity, and purpose in a language beyond words. Consider a moment you've experienced with someone whose presence was undeniable. Perhaps a teacher, a mentor, or a public figure. You didn't need to hear them speak to feel their authority, their conviction, their capacity to inspire. That energy, focused, calm, and deliberate, is present. It commands attention not through pressure, but through alignment of inner state and outer expression. Presence begins with awareness. A leader must be conscious of their own energy, posture, tone, and intention. Every micro-expression, every gesture, every pause contributes to the message you convey. Awareness allows you to calibrate not only what you say, but how it lands. People read energy before words, and presence is the mastery of that energy. Calmness is a cornerstone. In moments of stress or uncertainty, a leader's presence stabilizes the environment. When others feel tension, a calm and composed leader becomes the anchor. This doesn't mean suppressing emotion, it means harnessing it intentionally. The ability to remain centered, even in chaos, signals authority and reliability. Equally important is intentionality. Presence is not passive. It requires deliberate attention to how you move, how you speak, and how you interact. Each action, a nod, a glance, a shift in posture, can reinforce your influence. Leaders who cultivate presence act with purpose. Their movements, their tone, their focus are synchronized with their vision, and this coherence resonates with others. Another dimension is listening. Presence is amplified when you are fully attuned to those around you. Genuine listening communicates respect and awareness, and it invites trust. People respond to leaders who see them, not just hear them, who acknowledge energy and emotion, not just words. Listening is presence in motion, an active engagement that commands attention without dominance. Confidence, but not arrogance, is essential. Presence emanates from a grounded sense of self. You don't need to speak loudly to be noticed. You don't need to assert superiority to influence. True presence is quiet, yet magnetic. It requires self-assurance, rooted in competence and integrity, not ego or performance. Physicality matters as well. Posture, gestures, eye contact, and breath all communicate unspoken authority. Small adjustments in stance or movement can convey confidence, openness, and engagement. Presence is felt through the body as much as the mind. Leaders who embody their words physically transmit authenticity in a way that words alone cannot. Silence, paradoxically, is a powerful aspect of presence. A pause in conversation can command more attention than a paragraph of speech. Silence communicates thoughtfulness, deliberation, and control. It gives weight to your words, allows others to absorb meaning, and creates space for reflection. Presence uses silence strategically, not as absence, but as signal. Energy is contagious. A leader's presence shapes the emotional tone of a room. Enthusiasm, calm determination, and purposeful focus are mirrored by those around you. The subtle exchange of energy creates cohesion, trust, and alignment. Presence is not isolated, it is relational. It resonates outward, influencing the collective without forcing it. Finally, presence requires authenticity. You cannot manufacture it. It emerges from clarity of values, alignment of actions, and a deep connection to purpose. When your inner state matches your outer expression, presence becomes inevitable. People sense authenticity instinctively, and they gravitate toward it. Leadership, in essence, is an invitation. This is who I am. Join me in this journey. As you begin to cultivate presence in your own life, remember that it is both art and discipline. It is mindfulness made tangible, awareness expressed through action, and energy aligned with intention. Presence transforms leadership from something you do to something you embody. In the next chapter, we will explore how mastering influence through words, actions, and presence converges into the ultimate form of leadership. The ability to inspire, mobilize, and transform not just teams, but entire community. Presence sets the stage, and influence brings the performance to life. Chapter 14. Influence in Action, Turning Words into Impact. Imagine standing at the edge of a crowded room. Every eye is on you, but this time, it's not because of who you are or how loudly you speak. It's because of the force behind your words. The influence that moves people, shapes thoughts, and sparks action. Influence is the bridge between presence and transformation. It is the heartbeat of leadership, the power that turns vision into reality. This chapter is dedicated to understanding how to wield influence with authenticity, precision, and ethical clarity. Influence is not manipulation. It is the art of aligning intention with communication, so that your ideas resonate, your message lands, and your actions inspire. It is the capacity to catalyze change, not by coercion, but by compelling presence, conviction, and clarity. Consider a moment when someone persuaded you, not with authority or force, but through the clarity and energy of their vision. You didn't feel pushed. You felt invited, inspired, and understood. That is influence at work, the subtle, invisible force that engages both mind and heart. Influence begins with understanding. To move others, a leader must understand their audience, their needs, fears, hopes, and values. Influence is rooted in empathy. Without it, words are hollow. With it, words carry weight. Every statement, every question, every pause becomes an opportunity to connect, align, and inspire. Clarity is the next cornerstone. The most influential leaders speak with precision. They distill complex ideas into concepts that are understandable, relatable, and actionable. Vagueness diminishes power. Simplicity magnifies it. When you communicate with clarity, you invite alignment, not confusion. People naturally gravitate toward ideas that they can grasp and believe. Storytelling is influence in motion. Facts inform, but stories transform. When you share experiences that evoke emotion, you create connection. People remember stories long after they forget instructions. Stories carry your influence because they make your message human, relatable, and memorable. Timing is a subtle but critical aspect. Influence requires patience and intuition. The right word, at the right moment, can shift perspectives, ignite motivation, and catalyze action. Misjudged timing, however, can dilute even the most compelling message. A skilled leader senses the rhythm of conversation, the emotional temperature of the room, and the readiness of their audience. Consistency reinforces influence. People trust those who act in alignment with their words, who embody the principles they advocate. Influence is not a single act. It is a pattern. Every interaction, every decision, every expression of integrity builds credibility. Influence grows exponentially when trust and reliability are visible and unwavering. Confidence, again, is essential. Influence does not require volume or aggression. It requires certainty grounded in competence. When you speak with informed conviction, when your body, voice, and presence align with your message, people listen. They listen not because they have to, but because they sense authenticity and clarity of purpose. Active engagement magnifies influence. Asking questions, inviting input, and genuinely considering perspectives are all ways to transform influence from a monologue into a dialogue. Influence is relational, not transactional. It thrives in the exchange of ideas, in mutual understanding, and in co-created vision. Influence is amplified by integrity. The most lasting impact comes when actions align with value. Influence that is rooted in authenticity resonates deeply and endures. When people sense that your motives are pure, your influence multiplies. When motives are hidden or self-serving, influence collapses under scrutiny. Finally, influence is about impact. Words are vehicles, but outcomes are the measure. Influence is effective when it drives positive change, aligns teams, and inspires action that advances a collective vision. It is not an abstract skill. It is practical, measurable, and transformational. As you begin to master influence, remember, it is a reflection of who you are, what you believe, and how effectively you communicate your vision. Presence sets the stage, words deliver the message, and influence turns that message into movement. In the next chapter, we will explore the culmination of all these skills, how mastery of presence, communication, and influence converges into authentic leadership that leaves a legacy, shapes culture, and inspires generations. Influence is the vehicle, but legacy is the destination. Chapter 15, Legacy, Living Beyond Yourself. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine the world 20, 30, 50 years from now. Picture faces you will never meet, lives you will never walk beside, yet they are touched by the choices you make today. Legacy is not a distant concept. It is the echo of your life, the ripple of your actions that continues long after you leave the room, the city, the world you inhabit. This chapter is about understanding the profound truth that your life is a story in progress, a story that others will read, feel, and carry forward. Legacy is not built from fame, wealth, or recognition. It is built from impact, how deeply you influence hearts, minds, and actions. It is the culmination of presence, purpose, and persistence. Every decision you make, every word you speak, every act of courage or kindness contributes to the foundation of your legacy. Small acts, often invisible in the moment, accumulate into an enduring pattern that shapes culture, inspires generations, and transforms communities. Legacy is the invisible architecture of influence, constructed daily through integrity, empathy, and unwavering commitment to your values. Consider the quiet power of mentorship. When you invest your knowledge, time, and energy in someone else, you plant seeds that grow long after you are gone. A single conversation, a thoughtful insight, or a demonstration of courage can cascade through decades of lives. Legacy is the gift that transcends the boundaries of your own existence. Reflection is essential. To live a life of lasting impact, you must periodically pause, examine your actions, and ask, Am I contributing to something greater than myself? Am I building structures that will endure? Will the world be better because I was here? Honest self-reflection ensures that your influence remains intentional, purposeful, and aligned with your highest values. Integrity amplifies legacy. Words without action, promises without follow-through, intentions without discipline, these erode trust and diminish impact. Legacy is anchored in authenticity. It is the alignment of belief, action, and expression. People remember not just what you said, but how faithfully you lived your principles. Integrity is the soil in which the seeds of legacy grow. Vision is another cornerstone. Legacy emerges when actions are guided by a clear understanding of the future you wish to help create. Leaders, innovators, and changemakers leave lasting footprints because they see beyond themselves. They imagine possibilities, inspire others to see them too, and relentlessly pursue their vision with courage and creativity. Legacy is the visible manifestation of a life led with intentionality and imagination. Resilience is indispensable. The path to building a meaningful legacy is rarely smooth. Obstacles, criticism, and setbacks are inevitable. Yet those who leave enduring impact persist. They bend but do not break, learn but do not surrender, and continue to move forward in alignment with purpose. Legacy is forged in the fires of challenge, tempered by patience, and polished through perseverance. Compassion is transformative. Legacy is not measured solely by achievement, but by the humanity reflected in your actions. How many lives have you touched with kindness? How many hearts have you lifted with understanding and empathy? Generosity of spirit is the quiet force that multiplies the influence of every decision you make. Legacy is not only what you accomplish, but how deeply you care. Storytelling immortalizes legacy. The narratives you leave behind, through writing, mentorship, teaching, or simply sharing your experience, carry the essence of your life forward. These stories become a guide, a beacon, a source of inspiration for those who follow. Your legacy is the story others tell when you are no longer present, a reflection of the wisdom, courage, and love you shared. Ultimately, legacy is both personal and collective. It transcends individual ambition and touches the lives of countless others. It is the bridge between your life and the future, the invisible thread connecting your actions today with the hope, growth, and inspiration of tomorrow. Legacy is living beyond yourself, a life that echoes in ways you may never witness, yet profoundly shapes the world. As you reflect on your own journey, remember this: every choice, every word, every moment of courage contributes to the story you leave behind. Legacy is not reserved for the extraordinary. It is the natural outcome of a life lived with intention, presence, and the impact of your life is already unfolding, shaping realities beyond your imagination. In the chapters ahead of reflection, action, and continuous growth, remember that your life is a gift, your influence is power, and your legacy is inevitable if lived consciously. Legacy is not an end. It is the ongoing influence of a life fully embraced, a story fully told, and a world subtly and beautifully transformed by your presence.